March 3rd, 1944. A heavily overloaded freight train carrying over 600 illegal passengers still hasn't arrived at its next station. There is no collision, no explosion. However, with most people on board sound asleep, they have no idea they will never wake up. What happened inside that train would become the worst railway disaster in Italian history. After leaving Balvano Richigliano station just after midnight, train 8017 entered the poorly ventilated Galleria Delle Armi Tunnel near Balvano in southern Italy. As the two leading steam engines advanced through the tunnel, their wheels began to slip on the rails, made slick from humidity from a recent storm. Despite crews releasing sand onto the tracks from the sandboxes to improve traction, the train continued to lose speed until it came to a complete stop, with nearly all of its cars trapped deep inside the tunnel. Officially, there were only supposed to be fewer than a dozen crew members on board. However, when the train finally came out of the tunnel, the leading locomotives would leave behind an absolutely horrifying scene. A freight train should never have carried enough people for over 500 to die in a single incident, but the passengers aboard train 8017 had no other choice. You see, by 1944, southern Italy was collapsing under the strain of World War II. Benito Mussolini had led the country into war while remaining allies with Nazi Germany, but everything soon fractured. Italy signed a ceasefire with the Allies, only to have German forces invade and bomb them in retaliation. The chaos split the nation in two, leaving Italy to fight a civil war during a world war. Every available resource across Europe, including fuel, food, and materials, was diverted to war efforts. Both troops and military equipment were given priority for public transportation, as most passenger trains were destroyed by bombings, taken by the Allies, or heavily restricted. This meant that civilians could only travel with special authorization, but this was often impossible to obtain. And even with proper paperwork, strict ticket limits were enforced for safety reasons. This is where the freight trains filled the gap. With no legal alternative, civilians turned to train hopping and black market trading on the working freight lines. Rarely inspected and running regularly, these trains became an unofficial lifeline known as the Black Market Express. The Naples-Potenza Railway that train 8017 traveled was believed to be one of these routes. Communities depended on this shadow transportation system as passengers rode the freight lines to the countryside to buy food to feed their families and use for trading. Railway officials knew about the illegal activity but tolerated it anyway, as it kept the peace. Though these trains were intended for cargo, hundreds of men, women, and children climbed onto them. They believed the real threat was the war outside, but they were wrong. The truth was, the danger wasn't only political, it was already burning inside the steam locomotives themselves, and train 8017 would soon pay the ultimate price for that negligence. That danger came from what powered the train. At the time, many railway routes weren't fully electrified, forcing trains to switch from electric engines to steam locomotives mid-route. And like most steam locomotives, they ran on coal. However, due to resource scarcity, train engineers burned whatever coal they could find, even low-quality kinds. This low-grade coal was filled with impurities, and when burned, produced less power and high amounts of carbon monoxide gas. As an odorless, invisible, and poisonous gas, exposure to enough carbon monoxide is extremely lethal. To make matters worse, just a few weeks earlier, a train traveling from a U.S. military base had passed through a tunnel along the same railway line. While passing through, the engineer lost consciousness from coal fumes, fell between the locomotive and the tender, and died as a result. The incident was ruled an accident, and no safety changes were implemented. Around this time, machines across Europe were being pushed far beyond their limits as the war demanded more and more from them. Trains, tanks, aircraft, and warships were all operating under constant pressure. Many of those machines are actually recreated in War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle combat game, where players can control over 2,500 military vehicles, including tanks, aircraft, helicopters, and warships from the 1920s all the way to modern day, and it is free to play on PC, consoles, and mobile devices. Originally developed as a flying simulator game, realism has always been top priority, with gameplay often mistaken for actual combat footage. War Thunder's custom Dagur engine delivers highly detailed visuals and smooth performance across all platforms. One thing that really shows this realism is the damage system. Individual parts of each vehicle, including engines, weapons, and crew, are modeled separately, meaning hits can disable specific components. The X-ray view then shows exactly where the shell penetrated. You can join War Thunder's community of over 95 million players worldwide using my links in the description or pinned comment, and get a bonus pack for new players or returning players who haven't played in 6 months. Available on PC and consoles. This includes the exclusive Eagle of Valor vehicle decorator, 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of premium account. Available for a limited time only. Despite the warning signs, Train 8017 left Naples on March 2nd, just as it had on other nights before, heading toward Potenza. The train reached Battipaglia around 7 p.m., where the crew swapped the electric engine for 2 steam locomotives at the head of the train to accommodate the steep, non-electrified mountain route ahead, which required far more power to navigate. Between the time Train 8017 spent at the Battipaglia station and its trip to the Balvano station, around 200 more passengers boarded the train. By the time it had reached the Balvano station, over 700 passengers may have been aboard. The train stopped here for maintenance and prepared for the second leg of its trip. Pulling 47 good wagons and weighing over 500 tons, without including the passengers, it was now operating far beyond safe limits. After roughly 50 minutes of maintenance, Train 8017 left the Balvano Richigliano station at 0 hours 50 minutes and began the steep ascent into the mountains. But with that much weight, the train would only reach a top speed of 15 kilometers per hour. And when the train finally approached the Army Tunnel's entrance, its speed dropped even further. Under normal circumstances, the staff at the next station, Bellomuro, would signal back to Balvano once a train had passed through the tunnel. But that night, no signal ever came. Once inside the tunnel, the train gradually lost momentum until it came to a complete stop at 2 a.m., with all but 2 cars trapped inside. The exact reason for the stop is unclear, but it was likely caused by power loss from burning low-quality coal, or simply because the locomotives couldn't pull the overloaded wagons up the 1.3% incline through the Apennine Mountains. This alone would not have been a problem. However, ventilation inside the tunnel was almost non-existent, and with thick smoke already present from a previous train that had just come through, things were now starting to get really dangerous. While most of the passengers were still asleep and completely unaware, the drivers attempted to restart the train. Now, the tunnel was rapidly filling with even more toxic smoke. Restarting the train only pushed more carbon monoxide into the already tainted air. With no other option, the drivers at the front of the train desperately tried to reverse downhill out of the tunnel. Assuming the train was slipping off the tracks, brakemen at the rear immediately applied the brakes. With no way for the front drivers to communicate with the rear, they were now unable to leave the tunnel. Panicked and confused, the front drivers continued trying to restart the engines, filling the air with more and more carbon monoxide. The crew in front were the first to pass out, and by the time the passengers realized something was wrong, most of them had already lost consciousness. Some who did become aware of the danger disembarked from the train and tried to escape the tunnel on foot, but collapsed alongside the tracks before they could reach fresh air. Meanwhile, Michel Palo, a rear brakeman, realized something was terribly wrong and ran back toward Balvano station to seek help. But by the time he reached the station, hours later at 5:10 a.m., it was far too late. A train and rescue crew were sent immediately to help remove the train from the tunnel, but they couldn't get close enough due to the number of bodies blocking the tracks. Only about 40 passengers in the last wagons could be assisted. After 3 hours, rescue crews finally cleared enough bodies from the tracks, and at 8:40 a.m., a second team could finally haul the train back to Balvano station. By the time the train was fully pulled out of the tunnel, the scale of the disaster was undeniable. The victims were laid out at Balvano Ricciano station, where families moved from body to body, searching for someone they recognized. Only 235 were ever positively identified. The rest, who were mostly poor civilians, were buried in 4 mass graves nearby, and only the train crew received proper burials. Officially, 517 people were declared dead. However, estimates place the true death toll at over 600. The next day, the line reopened. An official investigation occurred in 1951 by a parliamentary commission, but by this time, important evidence was long gone. Causes were eventually listed as excessive weight, poor quality coal, and inadequate tunnel ventilation. On top of that, double-headed locomotives pulling from the front rather than banking from the rear worsened wheel slippage on wet rails and carbon monoxide buildup. Due to the war, authorities strictly censored any news or incidents happening. Because of this, the disaster was kept quiet and no one was ever held accountable. The Allies believed the news would only hurt morale, and Italian authorities wanted to distance themselves from the tragedy altogether. But to this day, the Balvano train disaster remains Italy's deadliest railway tragedy. Remember to sign up to play War Thunder for free and claim your exclusive bonuses with the links in the comments section below.